Hello and welcome to the Replimat. Jesus Christ, and he said measure of fan then. Welcome to the Replimat. Semi-regular, often regular chatcast in which two nerds go through Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Doctor Who in order from beginning to end. This week, we're back on Doctor Who after a few weeks off on account of life and DS9 guests and whatnot. And so we're... Hiatus, yes, that's an interesting word. It means a pause between exciting things. That's what Colin Baker once said on his Doctor Who Years tape. So today we are on the Aztecs as we near the end of season 1. Today, because we're time being what time is, we're going to be doing the first 2 episodes today, and next week we'll do the second 2 episodes, and then we'll go back to DS9. So today we're doing the Temple of Evil, and then the Warriors of Death. But before we start, I should mention that I am Andy, and over down there
is me, Tim. Hello.
Hello, Tim. How are we doing?
All right, I think. All right, yeah. The sun is shining. Birds are singing in the trees.
You think? And he's looking forward to cutting his grass later.
I am looking forward to cutting the grass later. Yes, this is true.
We live exciting lives, and there's a wee bit of a delay, but we'll work with it. Because what do you expect, hey? The joy is for the viewers, there's no delay, but we'll try to work around it somehow, because that's what we do every week, it seems. Okay, so without further ado, the usual nonsense of, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3 on DVD and 4, 5 on
6.
iPlayer, correct?
6 on iPlayer.
6, is it?
Yeah, 6.
Okay.
So
6. All these seconds, huh? Every second counts.
Yeah.
Okie dokie then. So, the DVD player people or Blu-ray player people in the future, because, eventually. On 3 with me, and if you're watching an iPlayer or some streaming service, hopefully, legally, on 6 with Tim. So I shall do the 1 to 3, and he'll do the 5, 4, 5, 6. We'll just skip a number, apparently. Cool. Okay, let's do this, shall we?
Let's do it.
1, 2, 3.
4, 5, 6.
That was episode 1, the Temple of Evil. Tim, what are your general thoughts on it?
It's a really great episode, I think. Really solid. It's it works very well. Within the kind of limitations of because they only work in a few sets, don't they? And there's obviously a lot of sort of black drape stuff, and that works well. I think it's very theatrical, but that is to its benefit. Clotoxel and Ortlock are great. They're like, I think they're kind of deliberately being portrayed as like almost like two sides of a coin. Your little angel and your devil on the shoulders like they have in cartoons and stuff. And yeah, that works very well. You're drawn particularly to Clotoxel when he's on screen. You watch him because he's constantly watching, plotting, scheming. He's very obviously a very intelligent, very, very savvy guy who is very sure of his position, very sure of Aztec society, and I think is suspicious of anyone who comes in from outside. even if they pretend to be a god, or even if they are purport to be a god. I think he's someone who needs to have faith proved, as it were. So, but yeah, a great episode with some really interesting characters.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I think pretty much everything you said. Frankly, there's really not a negative that I can think of for this first episode. The story's laid out very, very well and very quickly as well. They don't. I mean, they have the little initial bit of "ooh, look, trinkets," but they really dive deep straight in. As soon as they step outside, straight in, no messing around. I mean, yes, Taloxical, what's his name? Toxical, was it? Toxel. See, that's what I started saying. I can't remember his freaking name. Toxel. And Ortlock, much easier. The Toxel. Toxical, yeah. And Ortlock. I mean, Toxical, so what I'm going to call him from now on. He's way over the top. He's, like you said, the old angel and demon thing. And such a large performance, as the actor will happily admit, every time you watch the DVD. But it works. Like we said during the actual episode, I think this kind of story, you need that. It needs to be larger than life. It can't be played for real, I suppose, in a way. For TV, it needs to be played in that theatre. I mean, if this was made today, it would be a very different story. I mean, for one, it wouldn't go nowhere near some of the stuff it goes to. Because this goes to some very dark, thematic places that New Who would never go near anyway. Like if this was a film, for instance, they'd maybe go a bit deeper into it. But it'd all be CG and mass crowds and all this stuff. So it'd be not much imagination for the viewer. Whereas this, there's so much more implied. Like as you say, you've got the painted backdrops, which you can see they're painted backdrops, but for some reason it kind of enhance imagination, I think, and you hear the sound of people down below, so you visualize it all in your head. It's like reading a book almost, in a way. These episodes, certainly in this age, when you're doing something that's historical and quite big thematically, and they don't have a cast of 1,000, it paints a picture through just the sound and just the hints that the viewer hopefully paints it all for himself, and I think that actually is very effective. But yeah, great first episode, absolutely amazing. I mean, again, this is absolutely one of those stories where it's going to be hard to find fault with.
I think so, yeah.
That will happen in Doctor Who, but don't worry, we've got a censor rights coming up after this story, so plenty of time.
You said about Clatoxel's kind of as the sort of arch performance and the heightened performance. I don't think, when I watch it, I don't think that he doesn't look like he's acting in something different to everyone else. I think that's the key. Sometimes you watch a drama or a piece of melodrama or something, and someone is obviously putting an awful lot more in than others, and you just think it looks like that person is acting in a different show all of their own. Time lash. But here, then there are sort of energy levels. There's a kind of a baseline energy level that's rumbling along there. So it doesn't feel like he's not scene stealing. He's not pulling focus. Well, he is pulling focus, but he's not doing it through a desire to sort of show off or show anyone up. It's just that's how the character is.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Ortlock's a low energy character.
I think,
but it's all contained and
well, this is what I was going to say about Ortlock is although it's not arch in a way that Ringway is doing with Taloxel. See, I do really know the name. But it's still a very theatrical performance that I think it's Ian Cullen. I think is what it plays.
Ian Cullen's Ixter, yeah.
It's still, yeah.
Keith Pilot is Keith Pilot's Ortlock.
Okay, my bad. Ixter. Okay, well.
And John Ringham is Toxel.
Okay, so Keith. Yes, he is, definitely. But yeah, I think the performance of Ortlock, it's just as measured and just as theatrical as the Taloxel one. But again, it's different because obviously it has to be different, but still
Yeah.
just as, accentuated, just as what's the word? Precise. It's very deliberate. And it works. It's a counterbalance, but
Yeah.
neither, as you say, none of the actors feel like they're playing a different show. And I think that really, really helps sell the whole thing, even though it's quite larger than life in many ways. Right, shall we do episode 2?
The Warriors of Death.
The Warriors of Death, which, fact finds, was first transmitted on the 30th of May 1964. Very, very nearly 60 years ago. We're getting closer.
Really.
Don't know if we ever will, but we might do. Anywho, on 3 for you DVD lovers, and on 6 for you iPlane lovers like Tim, of Perfect Vic Tim. By the way, that's his name on the screen. You can't see it, but it's there. That's right. Whereas I'm a Amox Top. Hang on, I did have that right. A Moxley. A Moxley, which is a real.
That when you were half cut.
A Moxley, which is it's a real Aztec name. I was trying to find an Aztec name that at least started with my initial, so a Moxley, which apparently means something about well read or something like that. So that seems quite apt. Anyway, on 3 and 6, here we go. 1, 2, 3,
4, 5, 6. Yeah, they are.
Given material like this, they are. So,
first 2 episodes done.
Was The Warrior of Death, which, as I said, was first transmitted on 30th of May 1964. So, Tim, what do you reckon?
Another excellent episode. Lots going on. More action, I'd say. More movement this time than in the first episode. Susan's been sidelined slightly, but for kind of practical reasons, because the actor's been given a couple of weeks off. So, that Susan hasn't had any real involvement with the story so far anyway, not in the same way that Barbara, Ian and the Doctor have. So it's been easy, I think, to sort of sideline her, send her off to where's she gone, the seminary or wherever it is, and so there's a little bit of kind of info dumping going on with her as she learns about Aztec society. But like you said, when we were watching, it's similar to what was done in Marco Polo, and I don't think it doesn't feel as clumsy here as it did in Marco Polo. You haven't got a moment like in Marco Polo when Ian said, we still use the word hashashin today, meaning
Oh God,
like 1964 viewer. So there's nothing quite as kind of as awkward as that. And it's it's interesting, and it's obviously done in a way to have her sort of push against those Aztec customs like arranged marriage and so forth, which hadn't occurred to me until you brought it up. But again, it's not a repetition as such, but it's a motif we've already seen in Lucarotti's first script in Marco Polo, and it's again, I think there's what we get this time is we get Susan's view on it a lot more than in Marco Polo. I don't think, if I remember correctly, that Susan ever said, "Oh, no one's going to tell me who I'm going to marry." Whereas obviously that happens here, so it's not quite a repetition
Marco
of
Polo is more. Yeah, in Marco Polo, there's more of her bewilderment that Ping Cho was going to be married to this old guy and had no say, and the doctor, I seem to recall saying that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Whereas here, Susan's now in that situation, and she's like, "Oh, I don't bloody think so. What do you think? This is 2024?"
Yeah. So,
sad, isn't
but yeah,
it? How much we've gone backwards. Well, I say
but no, just generally,
yeah.
another very good episode. Some lovely shots, some lovely moments of direction, and just obviously stuff that's come out of from that rehearsal process. And just John, I get the feeling John Crockett is really on top of how to. He's not filming a piece of theatre. He's not looking at it as as a stage performance. So it's kind of being performed like a stage performance, but he's getting the camera into places where the audience, a theatre audience, wouldn't ordinarily see, and it lifts it so much. It makes it so much more interesting. And again, it reminds me of one of the disappointments I had over The Edge of Destruction. I just think if we'd had this level of slight sort of profiling of the performances, foregrounding and backgrounding and stuff, it makes it so much more interesting to watch, not just two people standing on screen talking to each other. But obviously you don't overdo it, because if you do it all the time, then it becomes dull. And you've got, there's that lovely scene with the Doctor and Barbara, which starts off with the Doctor going, "What the hell have you done? I told you not to do this," and ends up with him comforting her and saying, it'll be all right. We'll get it sorted. And again, the camera sort of follows the Doctor as he moves around Barbara, around the scene, and it's just it reels you in, and it keeps you focused. And then when Clotoxel comes in and the Doctor has to move out, and there's that wonderful way of sort of Barbara's the centerpiece of the action for that scene, or those two scenes, and it's everyone else that's moving around her. And so Clotoxel comes in, and suddenly you've got this, the sort of evil presence there side. And just, some wonderful, wonderful moments. I'm so glad that we can watch them. I would hate to have to.
I agree. I think for me, this episode, it's interesting that you got your main takeaway. You say it's more action. There's a lot of movement and whatever. All good. Whereas my main takeaway actually is almost the opposite. Whereas I sort of saw a lot of more still moments. I mean, lots of camera movement, but like you've got lots of like the Kameka and the Doctor stuff is quite still emotionally. It's just it's nice, beautiful. Even the Doctor and what's his face, Ixtar. Again, nice small scenes. Lots of small scenes. Again, camera movement, but nice small character stuff, plot stuff. Very well played out. Lots of actual thinking about it. Lots of two-handed scenes in this episode.
Yes.
Really good ones too. I mean, there is the action later, of course, but there's really not much you can say about this story or these episodes that is negative, is it? It's just like, I love this, I love that because this, I love that because of that. And it's nice. It's nice because, we've had a few episodes where we're both in different times. We're both like, already. But this is definitely one that I imagine there's got to be people out there somewhere that think this is really boring and dull. But clearly we are not one of those people.
Possibly. I do very distinctly remember when, before this came out on VHS, before I watched it for the first time, the kind of the prevailing sort of fan wisdom, as it were, which and it's usually not the case, but prevailing fan wisdom seemed to be as a kind of subscribing to the view that Barry Letts had about why they stopped doing historicals, because they were dull. They didn't get very good viewing figures and stuff. And I remember when this came out, I watched this and thought, my God, this is anything but dull. This is, it's engrossing. And I think that I recall a kind of
I remember when it
kind of a
first came on
shift,
VHS as well. Because
in sort
again,
of
like yourself,
tone
that was the first
about
time we watched
historicals
it,
at this
and
time. With the fans suddenly going, hang on, no, that's what we've been spurting this stuff for years that we don't necessarily even know where it came from. But actually, historicals aren't dull, or at least not all of them are dull. You can't. It's not just a general rule of thumb,
Well, having watched them all already by this point in our lives, anyway, I would say I'm hard pressed to think of an historical Doctor Who story that's available that is actually just full on dull, despite what Barry Letts perceived. But yeah, it's interesting because I distinctly remember when the Aztecs came out on VHS in, I don't know, 89, 90, whatever it would have been, possibly 91. The Andrew Skeletor cover and stuff. And I remember thinking, oh, historical, okay, because this is the first exposure I would have had to Doctor Who pure historical. And I remember watching it and like, oh, this is really good. I don't really see a difference between this than all the other 60s Doctor Who that's been released on VHS at that point, which wasn't many at all, really. But yeah, I think the advent of VHS really helped redefine people's perception of this era of Doctor Who bigly. See, it's all American references, sorry. But yeah, I'm looking forward to watching the next two next week.
Me too.
Nicely brings us to
that's
it for this week, viewers. We shall return next week for Bride of Sacrifice and the Day of Darkness. And the following week we'll return to DS9. So it's no point in me to say to Tim, the next episode is this. What do you think it's going to be? Because obviously Tim might possibly know.
I think it's going to be part 3 of the Aztecs, yeah.
That's a bloody good guess. You're good at this. So yeah, join us next week, gang. Like I say, because there's quite a few viewers now, so yay. For the second half of our commentary on the Aztecs, which I suspect will be us just praising it again, because I don't perceive any parts of the coming episodes where we're going to be like,
no, I think you're right there.
Yeah. So I guess that just means all we can say is catch us on social medias in the usual places. By the way, Twitter one's gone. Tim found out this week. I took it away because nobody uses it really for Twitter and nobody interacts. And I'm like, let's go stick with what works. And besides, I'm not here to support Elon Musk in any way. So
it is an ex-Twitter.
It's not being done. Let's get rid of. It is an ex-Twitter. But yeah, you can catch us on Instagram, on Patreon, and this will be up a week before on Patreon. And if you're watching on Patreon, you obviously know that. But if you're YouTubers watching it, please remember that these episodes will always be a week earlier on Patreon, and the link will be below. So go and check us out there if you're really eager to catch up. For instance, YouTubers watching this next week, it is free. More importantly, if you're watching this on YouTube next week, if you go to Patreon, you will find that the next part is already up. So you can just crack on with parts 3 and 4. See? There is benefits. And it's all free. We don't charge. But anyway, enough waffle. Tim, until next week.
Until next week, Andy. It's been a pleasure.
So, goodbye from Tim.
And goodbye from me.
Yes. Bye-bye, Duggan.
Bye-bye.
So, when do you know you've made it? when you've been blocked by YouTube. Yes, so this has become a very edited version of our reaction and commentary on the Aztecs Part 1 and 2 due to YouTube blocking us for copyright purposes. So, if you want the full reaction commentary, please go to Patreon, links below, and enjoy it all there. So yeah, it would appear we've made it. Bye-bye.